everyone! So for most of you watching this, I'm assuming your summer is finally in full swing, so I decided I'd make a video telling you guys what I suggest you read over the summer if you're looking for some good books. So here we go. First book I've got is The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. The story is Lenny Nelson's twin sister has just passed away very suddenly because of some type of heart failure, and she now finds herself torn between two boys. So the storyline sounds pretty basic and boring and cliche, but at the beginning of almost every chapter, there's one of Lenny's poems outlining how she's feeling about the death of her sister and the struggle she's going through, trying to decide how she feels and trying to figure out who she is. Because her whole life, she's been defined by her twin sister, and now she's gone. It's also one of the first more risque books I ever read. It's not really that bad, but I think I read this when I was about 12, and for me it was a little... Next up is Shine by Lauren Miracle. First up, Lauren Miracle is one of my favorite authors because she writes a lot of Southern-based fiction. I feel like I relate to her books really well because they have this very Southern coming-of-age feel to them, which is very important to me because that's kind of who I am as a person at the moment. So Shine is the story of Kat, who lives in a small southern kind of hick town, and her friend Patrick has just been the victim of a gay bashing. So Kat takes it upon herself to figure out who did it and why. But what makes the story really interesting is that Kat has isolated herself from her entire town for reasons that we aren't told about until maybe the middle, near the end of the book. So Kat ends up discovering all these secrets and lies and mysteries that are like brewing underneath the surface of this really small town, and it's just so fascinating. I got the feeling it was going to be a be true to yourself kind of novel, like teaching you how to deal with bullying and whatnot, but it becomes a really dark, twisted mystery novel that's so good. I read this entire book all the way home from the beach last summer, which is why I have it listed as one of my favorite summer reads, but it's so easy to get through, but it's so wonderfully told, and I just really like it a lot, and I think everyone should read it because I don't think I've met anyone who's read this book, and it's one of my favorite books of all time now. I just love it so much, so read it, and then we can talk about it, and it'll be great. Next up we have Peace, Love, and Baby Ducks, also by Lauren Miracle. This is the story of Carly, who, after one summer, decides that she wants to completely reinvent herself and figure out who she is. She wants to be different from everyone else. One of the reasons I like this story a lot is because it deals with Carly's inner turmoil about discovering who she is, and it's great because Carly is such a flawed character. She tries not to be influenced by other people, and she's definitely not influenced by them in the way that she does what they do, but that she wants to do the exact opposite of what everyone does, so it points out the contradictions and the fallacies in her thinking, and it's just a really wonderful book for figuring out who you are as a person. When you read this book, you're either going to love it or hate it because you'll be so connected with Carly because you'll have experienced some of the same things, or you'll really, really hate her because she's really indecisive and I've heard my friends say that she's very whiny, but I love her and I think she's a great character, so I think you should pick this book up. Next up we have 13 Little Blue Envelopes and The Last Little Blue Envelope by Maureen Johnson. And Ginny's aunt has just passed away, and she receives a blue envelope. And basically it tells her to go to Europe and find 12 more blue envelopes. So Ginny, who is very shy and very not adventurous at all, goes to Europe by herself and treks across the continent finding these blue envelopes and having adventures. And it's really good. I enjoyed it a lot. And then in The Last Little Blue Envelope, you have to read the first one to figure out what the second one is about, and Maureen Johnson is wonderful. Next up we have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and no, I am not recommending this book just because the movie just came out. For those of you who have been living under a rock, The Great Gatsby is told from the perspective of Nick Carraway. As he tries to become one of the in crowd in the 1920s, he ends up meeting Gatsby, his very extravagant neighbor, and he is pulled into his very turbulent and flamboyant lifestyle, and lots of interesting things go down. I feel like The Great Gatsby is a great summer read, especially if you're into classics, because it's not difficult to read at all. Because it's written so beautifully, you just float along the pages as you're reading them, and it's almost like the book is singing to you in a sense. Next up we have Bakuman by Sugumi Oba and Takashi Obata, which is a manga, I realize I'm pronouncing it wrong, which is a Japanese comic book kind of thing for those of you who aren't aware. I'm a big fan of manga. I've read a lot of it. This is one of my favorites. It's by the author and illustrator who wrote and illustrated Death Note, so that's one plus in its favor. I loved the Death Note manga. And it's the story of two kids who meet in middle school and decide that they want to seriously pursue the career of a manga artist. And it's so good and just completely opens up the world of manga and what writing it and creating it is like. And it's really interesting because there's an author, and there's an illustrator, and so sometimes you wonder if this is based sort of on Tsugumi and Takashi, and it's so interesting to think about, and it's just really cool because I love Japanese culture and I love anime and I love manga, and the whole storyline is really awesome. And it's it's fun. It's one of my favorite mangas of all time, so if you've never read manga before, I think this is a pretty good one to start with, because it's not a very heavy storyline, but it's a really fun, really good, and sometimes really intense storyline, so pick it up. Next up we have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I read this book last summer for summer reading for my AP English class, so maybe that's why I'm associating it with summer now, but it has become possibly one of my favorite classics of all time. I love the way Mark Twain writes. My dad read me Tom Sawyer when I was a little girl, and it's just very sarcastic and clever, and it's a big adventure story of Huck Finn going down the Mississippi River, and it's just wonderful, and it's fun, and sometimes it's sad, but mostly it's fun, and it's just great, and I think it's a very good book. Some people are turned off because the language is really hard to read, but once you get through like a few pages or chapters, you become accustomed to the way people speak and you can figure out what exactly they're saying. But I think that adds to the story. You just have to get through at least the beginning of the book before it really connects with you and it really hits you and the story comes together because of that type of language that he's using. Next up we have The Lightning Thief, the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. First off, if you've never read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, read it now because it's possibly one of the greatest series I've ever read in my entire life. It's so good. It's the story of Percy Jackson who discovers he's the son of a god, and that basically is what the entire plot of the entire series is about. All of the misadventures and the wonderful things and horrible things that happen when you're the daughter or son of a god, and it has all these allusions to Greek mythology and all these new interpretations of Greek myths, and it's so good! Oh my god, it's so good! I love it so much! Two main reasons I picked this for a summer read are A, it's middle grade fiction, so it's really easy to read, and during the summer you probably want something that's a little easier to read, and B, when you're a demigod, or son, daughter of a god, you're sent to Camp Half-Blood, so most of the storyline of Percy Jackson and the Olympians takes place during the summers at Camp Half-Blood, so it's very summer-oriented, which makes it good and summery, and I like it. It's just a good book, and it's so good. Read it. It's good. And finally we have Epic Fail by Clara Lazebnik. This is basically just a modern Pride and Prejudice story. I read this before I read Pride and Prejudice and I still loved it. It's cheesy and it's cute and it's adorable and it's super easy to read. I read it in like an hour and it's just a nice break if you're reading a lot of series or a lot of really tough literature and you just want something fun and cute. A big plus is that it's based off of Pride and Prejudice, so if you love Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice and that kind of stuff, then you'll get a lot of references in here, which is always fun, but mostly it's just a fun book. It's fun to read, it's not hard to read, and I suggest you pick it up if you're looking for something easy to skim through on the beach or while you're laying out by the pool. So those are my suggested summer reads. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, or if you would like to and you'd like to know more about them. Tell me what you thought, and all that good stuff. Don't forget to follow me on Tumblr, Twitter, and friend me on Goodreads, and I will talk to you guys later. Happy summer. Hold on, I gotta charge my camera. Where's the charger? Where's my charger? Because you'll have experienced some of the things. Meh. I've discovered I hold books to my face when I want you to like them, and I like them a lot, so I like this one a lot. Okay, are we still recording? We're good. That was gross. Too much running for my charger.